around.
Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am stoked about this one because, well, the topic is amazing. And we got two amazing guests. We got Ash here, we got Harrison here, and I am pumped for this one. Now, while I am pumped, y'all should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the good stuff, get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine, Fridays for The Collective. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. And of course, if you are not yet, you should be signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter, and it goes out every Sunday with all kinds of tidbits, good information from the show itself, but a little bit of brain candy for you to chew on throughout the week. So make sure you signed up for that. And if you haven't, you're just wrong at this point. I mean, really. What kind of person does this? Other than that, let's get right into it. I want to get some intros and then we can get into the convo. Ash, you're on top. Give us a quick 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
All right. So my Frago intro is I'm a son of an immigrant. I swore allegiance to the crown and flag as a professional bullet catcher and lawn dart. I'm an outdoorsman trapped in the city. And through all my trauma, I still consider myself to have a pretty blessed existence.
Bam. I like that. 16 seconds, though, so I got to give you a little touch on that one. Harrison, how about yourself?
Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to be here. My name's Harrison Lewis. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, formerly Army Ranger, formerly Army Night Stalker, and founder of Grind. Just a functional athlete, do all the things, and like to have fun.
Bam. I like it. Sean, how's Mountain treating you?
Yeah, things are good out here. Looking forward to this conversation, see where it goes. Like Ash, I'm an immigrant myself and used to be a professional at all kinds of things in my first career, and perhaps not any of them like notable. We'll see where this conversation goes, and I'll see how I feel about myself at the end of it.
I think you'll feel pretty good about yourself just in general, as you normally do. But let's dive into this whole concept of war stories. Now, I want to make this clear just ahead of time. We're not here to tell war stories for those that are listening. There are lots of podcasts out there that do that. If you want to hear some more stories, go over there, listen to them. We're going to talk about why it's important to tell our stories. So, Ash, I'm going to talk to you first. When you first heard this topic, what was the first thing that clicked in your head?
Well, first thing I got to get out of the house, some housekeeping, is because I still wear two hats, two different organizations. I have to say that anything I say is my own personal view, doesn't represent those industries, and my stories are mine from my perspective. To the actual question, there's a time and place when we actually have these conversations and who we actually share them with. I think braggadocious doesn't really pass the test after all these guys you have on your panel. Everyone has a story, so what makes my story any more unique to anybody else? That's for our inner circle, and it should only be used outside of that if you're trying to bring somebody up, try to elevate them.
I like it. That's a good start. Harrison, what are you thinking? What was your first thoughts?
You know, my first thought was the importance of reflecting on your experiences. Like Ash said, everybody has a story. And until you really dissect what you've experienced, you're constantly going to live this cyclical pattern of experiencing over and over again. You're not actually going to learn from that experience. I think it's important to reflect on in order to grow.
I'm digging this where it's going already, Sean. What are you thinking?
I like the direction, and I agree with the boys. And I think that maybe one thing that I'd like to throw in is, if you're just telling your story, your war story to anyone who will listen, but you're not taking the time to listen to someone else's war story, then do you even have context on how to tell a good story, or if your story is being told well? And so I think that what can happen, or I've seen it happen, is a veteran has a story that they want to pass along, and they start telling it, and they only tell it one way for the rest of their life. Because we're not taught how to tell our story. Did any of you guys attend a university course, Tell Your Story 101? Because I didn't. And so, we're all just trying to figure it out, man, I think. And so, to Ash's point, I feel he kind of nailed it right out of the start line is we're supposed to tell a story that raises others up. And if we're not telling our story as well as it could be told, I'm now suggesting maybe it's time to start looking around and listening to many other stories to start telling yours better.
That is a great point. I got a couple comments here that I want to touch on, and then I got a point on that. I just want to hit these real fast. Dan C. jumped in here. Good morning, gentlemen. Kicked some ass today, as per the norm. Dan, thanks for jumping in here. Blackwater Technical Diving on the Instagram side says, battles with ourselves more or less seem to be where the mission statement is for the collective. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Battles within ourselves. So my thought on this is that, and I've said this before on the show many times, I watched my grandfather for years, he's a World War II veteran, never tell a soul about any of his experiences. And that affected him very negatively for many, many years because he told himself a story over and over and over again about how he was a coward, how he was not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think a lot of times when we allow ourselves to ruminate in our own head, when we don't tell anybody, we don't get any reaction. As Sean was saying, there's no context to the stories we're telling. And I think that's an important piece in that we do need to tell our stories, but at the same time, not go too deep down the rabbit hole. Ash, you got any thoughts?
Well, also the evolution of your story, because when I went through my first deployment, I had a way of looking at it. I couldn't look back on that story until I had some growth, some years past, something else to relate it to. So how I looked at how I used to tell what happened way back when compared to having almost 20 years looking back on it, that's going to evolve the story, how I looked at the experiences, the players in it, and the emotional outcome.
Interesting. Harrison, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think the story evolves. If I were to take a story that took place on my first rotation, and it's 2022, and it's the first time I tell the story, I actually digest it. 3 years later, 2025, that story is completely different, because I've allowed myself to grow in this season or chapter of my life, and my reflection of that same story is completely different. I may have forgotten some things, or some things have become more clear to me. And then also listening to other people's stories as well. I get a deeper appreciation, or your brain kind of opens up a little bit more into the context of what took place. And that just takes time. I think it's kind of like that dream. Man, I had a nightmare last night, but I can't remember any of it. And then as days pass, you're like, oh, that was a really interesting dream that I had. I actually can't remember this.
That little bit of time to dissect and digest what happened, I think, is super important, because if you just start ripping out in the middle of it, like trying to rip off a bandage after you just put it on, it's not going to help you in any way. Sean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think the boys are onto it. And, time changes a man. Time changes history. Time changes everything. And it's how much time you allow yourself to revisit yourself, as it were. So, when Ash was on the podcast last, it feels like Ash is a bit different even since he was last on the podcast. And I don't know why it feels different, but I'm paying attention. He just feels a bit different. And has something happened in his life, or has a bunch of things happened in his life since he was on? Yeah, freaking guaranteed it has. And so that is the way of it. Every day, if you're a busy person who's engaging in a full life, every week your story should be a bit different. And by the way, not only should your story be different, you should be telling it a bit different. But then that takes skill to get better at telling your story. It's kind of like a writer, I believe, is what I was thinking as I was listening to the fellas. In school, you're taught how to write. Maybe you're taught how to creatively write, but you're never really taught how to do it so well that you're recognized as having a professional talent for writing. But we're expected in the external world to be able to tell our stories like a professional speaker, like a professional writer. In fact, if you've got a story to tell that is going to help change the world, or help shape the world, or help shape your community, perhaps, now you're on a stage with spotlights and no one's ever taught you how to tell a story, and you're kind of making it up, and maybe you're not doing a great job. That's how I feel I've done it. Like, I've never been taught formally. I don't know how to tell my story well because I haven't attended that class. And so we are all literally making it up as we go along. And sometimes we do it well and sometimes we don't. But I'm going back to the contextuality of things. The only way to get better at something is to look around at people who are doing it well. And so, in this conversation, I'm watching everyone and listening to everyone, and I'm trying to elevate my game in the minute, never mind on a daily basis. So I do think telling a story or relaying oral history or connecting with another human being through verbal is far less easy than I think most people understand.
Sean, I want to jump in on that because you bring up a great point about storytelling. So, from the law enforcement side, for investigations, when you give a statement in the instant that you just came off an event, you think you're completely fresh because it just happened. We're finding out that once you've let it marinate and kind of be in the sauce and actually go through the process and what did I see and what actually happened, we're finding that after a period of time, you're getting a little bit more clairvoyancy rather than the initial blurt out. So to relate it to our own personal lives, you got to marinate in a little bit before you actually just spew what just happened.
That's a great point. Harrison, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, my immediate thought was, and you guys have served, and you go on a mission, you come back, and in the military, you do an after action report. You sit down, the entire team, the command team, you kind of deep dive what took place during the operation, and I think our community has taken that an extra step, and maybe there's been a unique transition due to the implications of mental health in our community, where we would leave it at that AAR. Whatever happened, for several generations, World War II, Vietnam, everything that was discussed, what happened during an operation, stayed in that AAR. We never talked about it with anyone. And then we had this huge transition during the GWAT where, that those stories, the personal accounts, gave some type of context to the upcoming generations. I recall hearing stories from, sergeant majors, sergeant first classes, senior leaders in the 75th Ranger Regiment, senior pilots, flight leads in 160s about what happened in 2004. And I was like 7, I was, roughly 10 years old during that time. But I remember the accounts that they shared and how it affected them and how it applied to what they're doing today. And I think it's really important. I think we're doing a really good job at doing it as a community, and I think it should continue.
So, well, let me ask you this then, and I won't go on the whole panel to jump on this, is that you're right. We would all just leave it at the AAR, right? We could just, nope, don't want to talk about it. But we've all met dudes who, and women who've had these massive traumatic events happen in their lives who've never spoken about it again. And it has been a very negative thing to do, to just leave it at the AAR. So let me ask you then, what is the, where's the benefit? What is it that makes us want to share our stories, and why is that helpful when we do? Harrison, I'm going to come right back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think culturally in our community, we have taken the kind of stigma away from it, that stoic persona isn't actually strength. Bravado, being the strongest guy, I'm tough, I can compartmentalize every little facet of my experience on this earth. But now we're realizing that through sharing that experience, our worldview changes. Like I see things differently. I've been out the military. I kind of use my hair as my gauge of how long I've been out now. I've been out for a couple of years, and my view in 2021, like I said earlier, is completely different than it is today. And people sharing those experiences are just shaping minds and helping people understand what happens in combat, what happens in the military, what happens during that transition, and then how it affects us in our personal life, because that's the side a lot of people really don't talk about.
100%. Ash, you got any thoughts?
Yeah. So like in the AAR, I mean, we can talk about things that are going to keep us alive, what went good, what went bad, digest the rest. But, like the doc was saying there, it comes down to, well, my missus wasn't with me when I was, on deployment or when I was frontline policing. So she's getting to learn about me in her dating history So I have to introduce her to like why certain things are the way they are, why I think the way I am. It gives her a better understanding of what she's investing in, and just to not tell her that and just tell her accept the way I am or whatever would be hard for anyone to digest. Number one, someone that you're intimate with. So we're slowly breaking down those levels, and like Harrison said, the bravado. It's great and all when you're out there getting it done, but if you're always going to be hackles up, hard charger, all day, all night, when do you have a chance to be you? Like, what are you protecting yourself against?
That's a great
I have
question.
I have a little funny comment to add in there. This was this week, this past week. I'm 32. I'm single. I just started seeing this girl, amazing girl. Hopefully, she's the one, and I can tell you guys at a later time. We're in my truck, and we're driving back from this event, and I opened up my center console, right? And I keep my last tambourine with me at all times. I open it up, and she's like, "What's that hat?" And I close it, and I say, "We'll talk about it at some point." And you just caught me in a moment of hypocrisy, because I'm talking about, the need to talk about these experiences. And that moment happened in the last 7 days. It was Sunday night. And I was like, we'll talk about it later. I'm not ready to talk about this. Where are we going again? And it's like these things happen. And I should have caught it at that moment and just opened up. But now I'm going to make it a point to.
But it's incremental because it all has to happen a little bit at a time. You just can't open up the floodgates to your significant other or your family members, just belt fed unload all your experiences all at once, because man, we're gonna be single forever if we do that. So man, you're doing it at the right time with the right reasons, dude. So 100% support. We're looking for wedding invitations coming up. I know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll be watching. Don't worry, we're watching. Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, I love that story. I mean, I really do. That to me is one of the best war stories I've ever heard, because it's got everything to do with war and nothing to do with mag changes. I love that story. In fact, it's one of the best stories I've heard this year, and it's such a small story. And if you hadn't told that, we'd be none the wiser. And so I think that's the important part, is you kind of came in with that story like openly. And I would really respect that, because, sometimes a dude will come in with a story and he'll couch it, or he'll be holding back, or he'll be like building it up, or it'll be like a drama or whatever. And somehow it just doesn't always connect with me. Like if someone is front loading the drama before we get to the drama, but you just like put it out there, really not super casual, but like right. That's the word I'm going to use. Right. The correct vibe, the correct frequency, the correct synchronicity for this moment with us. And like maybe you do that a bit differently with your bros, like around the corner or whatever the case is, like, your best friend from high school or whatever. Maybe you tell the story a bit different, and I'd appreciate, that you do. But you told it right for me, because now I want to know more. And I think that's a critical piece to the war story, is it's got to be personal. I feel there's got to be a lesson in it, and I want to hear more. And so, like, your story doesn't fall clearly into, like, quote unquote, the perfect war story, but it checks off the boxes for me where I'm like, I'm not quite on the edge of my seat, but I want to get to the green room now and hear all about the girl. You know what I'm saying? Isn't that great?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing.
it's the greatest war story ever today, anyway, until I hear a better one. And again, I think maybe the secret sauce in this moment is the fact that you just genuinely and authentically owned it casually, without like trying to throw Thor's hammer or shoot lightning bolts out of your eyes. It was just cool as hell. So thanks.
This is a great point, and I think authenticity, especially when it comes to war stories or military stories or police stories or anything where we have to go, so there I was, right? Or okay, hold on, everybody, let's put your helmet on. Any sort of preamble makes it inauthentic, right? If there's a point to it, there's times when I'm teaching jiu-jitsu that I will use a reference of the military, of like, oh, well, in this particular situation, this applies. But I don't go into every class saying, okay, everybody, remember that I was in the Army once, and I'm going to talk about Army stuff, right? we don't need to do that. I think it's that's where it starts to get negative, is when you start to push it on people, when it becomes inauthentic. It's no longer, excuse me, it's no longer you developing a relationship with someone in that you're adding a little bit more personal detail about yourself. You are inundating with them with the, man, my throat's all over the place, with your story, if that makes sense. What do you guys think? Harrison, I'm going to hit you first.
Yeah, there's a finesse to it, I think, because and this is interesting because when I left the military, I went right into studying. You know, I went to school in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm from the South, Louisiana. I'm a country boy, and I was the only African American in my entire cohort, and I was the only Ranger. I'm just a veteran, and I'm just fresh behind the fence, you know, and I just felt weird, you know, and people were asking me questions. And, you know, around that time, we had just got done with all the negotiations and the downturn in the Middle East, and things were just different. And I'm here to become a doctor. And people are asking me what took place in your life. And there's always a tendency to have that bravado, like I was a cool guy type of thing as a civilian. But I think that misses the mark in terms of the true lesson or experience that you want other people to understand. You know, I don't want people to be afraid of me. You know, I can't. My patients, if they knew that I was telling stories in a way that created fear or, you know, a kind of disconnect from reality in a sense, then, you know, I'm honestly doing the negative of what we're all charged to do after we serve.
That's a beautiful point. Ash, you got any thoughts on it?
Well, it's pretty apparent that our culture, for those who serve, it's as much as our generation hereditary. So it's clear that I'm a military guy. It's clear that what I do in my service, kind of, I look this way. You can read me, but there's a bit of gatekeeping when it comes to my stories and why do you want to know? And then as far as like, um, how much am I going to impart on you, and what are you going to do with that knowledge? It could be as simple as, you know, I've done a lot of school talks, and some kids, you know, you get some young kids who just want to ask silly questions because I was that age too, and they ask you inappropriate questions, and you turn around on them like, well, why do you want to know some of the obvious questions from being overseas? And they can't give an answer, so you don't earn the response. So I do gatekeep, because there's no benefit from telling some of these stories to people who can't utilize them to go to the next step or ask the next logical question.
That is a great point, and I do school talks as well with kids, and I get those same questions, and yep, I give them the same kind of answers. Why do you want to know? Because if you don't know why you're asking a question, then you don't really care about the answer, in my mind. Sean, what are you thinking?
I was thinking about, so Carrie Baker came through town, through Roslyn just a couple of days ago, and I didn't know Carrie overly well. I just did a little bit through social media, and so we hung out on the Roslyn sidewalk, Main Street, for about 4 hours, just jawing, just chirping back and forth and seeing what's up, and learned a ton about Carrie. Cool as hell guy, and so off he goes. And the following day, Tim Turner is up in my DMs, and he says, hey, how well do you know Carrie, kind of thing? And I said, well, I kind of just met him. And he said, yeah, he's got his MMV. And I was like, oh, wow, didn't know that. Because Carrie never said anything during the convo. He wasn't all up in my grill poking me with all the mag change stories. We never said mag changes once in our entire 4 hours. In fact, that's a lie, because I said it once. And I said, one of the things about the podcast, if you ever come on, is you'll understand that we just don't talk about all the mag changes, because like there's more things to talk about than mag changes. And he nodded and smiled and he said, I like that. And so, but he wasn't mag changing me either in the conversation. Like he wasn't telling me all of the drama and the grit and the sweat, blood, and tears, because it was just two dudes in the Roslyn sunshine enjoying a chill day, like just hanging out with each other. And I think the point I'd like to make is this, that with the right person, the war stories aren't necessary. You can find a way to communicate without all of the drama. But there is a time and place where you should pass something along. Like I would have perhaps liked to have known that maybe Kerry could have found a way to quietly insert that in this particular moment, like he could have explained his story to me. But he didn't, but I didn't push it and he didn't push it. And so here's the other piece to that. Like he could have done it a way different, but he did it his way. And now I find out the next day a little bit more detail about him. And you know what that does to me? It makes me think, oh, I respect him even more. And would I have respected him less if he would have been telling me all of his dirt during our conversation? No, it would have just been a different conversation. But just the little bit that I now know, oh, he didn't mention that, but he did that. It kind of, it sounds silly, but it raises him up a notch, in my opinion, in that he wasn't overly sharing, I suppose. And so I think that you can tell a story in many ways. And perhaps it's based on the eye of the beholder or the person who's receiving the story. You're supposed to tune into that, and maybe he realized something about me, maybe he knows enough about me that he held back just enough that it intrigues me more. And so, it's not a fire and forget. It's not send your conversation one way downrange and then turn and look the other way. I mean, it's a two-way highway that is real time and you're supposed to pay attention to these things. And maybe he was, but that's for another conversation, I suppose.
And Harrison, just so you know, the MMV is the Medal of Military Valor. It is our third highest award for valor in Canada. So just so you have a bit of clarification on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the context, and your story about Kerry makes me think of one of my best friends. We went through selection together, and but right before that, we went on this weekend concert tour. There was a band out of New Orleans that played down in Texas. They played Houston, Dallas, Austin, and a group of buddies. We were groupies. Like we followed them through 3 cities and just, had fun in each city every night. Well, the night we're in Dallas, he met his now wife. And 6, 7 years later, I'm coming off the ramp. He's going on and he says, hey, when this is all over, we're moving to Dallas. And now 5 years later, he lives 10 minutes down the road from me. Like I can leave my house, turn left, and I'll be at his house in 10 minutes. And I've been here in Dallas now for about 8, 9 months. We have not told a single war story. Not a single one. He just had his second child, a little girl, came over, held her. He just got his porch renovated. So I came over one night. We put the kids to sleep, got them all cleaned up. They went to bed, and he took me out in the backyard and said, hey, man, this is a nice porch. And we sat on that porch for about 3 hours. And we talked about everything except changing magazines. It's just something that's it's special, when you can have somebody. And he's a guy that, he was down in 1st Ranger Battalion. I know you guys are familiar with Savannah down there. And he was on a lot of really crazy ops, the last several years, especially as things winded down. And there's stories that I don't even know about. I don't need to know everything he experienced, but the time we share together, it's really special. Yeah, really awesome stuff.
I love this. And I mean, what's more important, right? I would rather sit on the deck and talk about that and be like, wow, man, these are nice screws. Like than talk about some of the stuff that we used to do, because we both understand that we don't need to discuss it with each other.
Right.
I got a bunch of comments here I want to touch on, but any thoughts before we jump beyond this? Sean,
well, I'd like to just add that he works at JP Morgan now, and he's like, dude, I'm a banker. we just sit there and laugh. Like, hey, man, like I'm working on people's knees and their shoulders. Like, yeah, I sell bank accounts.
And so, maybe the most important story of the day is the war story transition. You both came up together in the same game, and now you're in totally different games, but you're just around the corner from each other. I mean, you've always been around the corner from each other to some degree since, you were very, very young men. But now you're literally around the corner from each other and you get to understand that journey together. And I think that's one of the key pieces on war stories is it's not just the telling of the story, it's the sharing of the story and where that story takes each person in that moment. And like if you can hang out with a dude on a porch long enough, like the story will take you to the rest of your life, rather than focusing on what you did in your life. And having my wife and I and our two boys about nearly, I don't know, maybe 18 years or so ago, we lived down in Sugarland, Texas for 2 years. And, out in Louisiana, down in New Orleans and all that good stuff. And I get the South. Well, I understand it a little bit. And I love the sense of it's very familial. It's very family oriented. It's got a great vibe to it, man. It's its own thing. And so, like I was listening to you tell the story about you bouncing around with the boys, on the concert tour, and I could see it in my head because I've been on that ground. I understand a little bit about the culture, and so how you told it, I could see it in my mind. I was in the car with you guys as you're heading off to the next one. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's the critical part of a war story, we'll call it, is that you can understand what you're trying to put across to the person. Perhaps even formally, you've established, I want to help this person in a certain way. Dot dot dot, and that's what you want to talk about. But then that's got to get put off to the side because the story itself has to be able to hold up. And I got to be in the story. I can't just be like in my chair listening to you. I want to be in the car listening to you. And so I think that as storytellers, if we ever want to get good at telling our stories or helping others through our stories, you've got to be able to put the person into the story with you rather than just talking at them.
That's a great point. Ash, you got any thoughts before I jump into these comments?
No, just a similar story. So we're all familiar with Operation Pegasus, and or what I should say, we come out to the island, British Columbia, and we do some parachute drops, and it's centered more so along first responder, military mindsets, and then civilians also get in on it. So again, sneaky 5-0 that I did basic with, great dude. We both carpooled all the way down, camped their whole way, barbecued on the back of the tailgate, just in line for the ferry, and just like smoked out the whole place. It was like steak on the grill. So we get to Pegasus, and we had a lot of people from the same tribe. And by that, I mean like everyone had the same story if asked, but it never came up. It was like, what are you doing now? The transitions. Hey, I got married. Hey, I had kids. Hey, I went through this tumultuous time, and this was my fix it, or this is how I'm reworking the problem. So yeah, there wasn't mag changes as we're bringing that into the vernacular, but everyone was front side focused on what we were doing to do the parachute drops. And then after, when we all broke away from the drop zone, it was um, just helping out the dude who was parked next to you, and someone had kids next to us, and hey, how's it going, and like, how did you end up here, and lots of storytelling. None of it involved like flak vest.
I love that. And yes, Op Pegasus is awesome. And Harrison, you probably don't know what we're talking about. But our friend Tim Turner and a whole bunch of airborne dudes and some civilian parachutists put on Operation Pegasus Jump every year, and it brings vets and first responders out to go jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. And it's a great time. Actually, Tim's watching on the Instagram side. I got a bunch of comments. I just want to run down these before
So
we
it is a
carry on.
good time. And it has been done 4 years in a row now, and there will be a fifth, of course, and many more. But to the core of it, the reason that people get together on Operation Pegasus Jump is for mental health awareness and human betterment, as it were. I mean, that's pretty much the central pillar of it. It is an opportunity for us all to share our stories and to hang out and catch up and have a few laughs and maybe even have a few cries. But at the end of the day, it's primarily directed towards mental health betterment or trying to heal people as a group, as a clan, as a gang. And so the only way that that can be done is not by everyone gathering together on a drop zone and staring at each other silently. Silence doesn't improve anything. And so it's how the conversations are told that is improving things at Operation Pegasus Jump. But before there's a word said, I think this is worth mentioning, and maybe we'll see where the conversation goes. I don't want to drag you away from your comments, Chance. I know you got a bunch. But before the first word is said, let's pretend for a moment everyone's standing on the drop zone staring at each other silently. It will be the vibe. It will be the frequency. It will be the energy of the moment that allows it to go in the direction that it's supposed to go. Because if everyone's standing on there with their arms folded and chests puffed out and back straight and chins up and staring at each other stoically, it's the wrong vibe. And so the vibe will set the tone for the conversation. And so gathering people together is important. But if Tim is on here right now tracking what's going on, well, Tim set the right tone. Tim and the gang set it up right to crack-a-lack it right out of the park. And I love that, man, because it could have gone totally sideways if not for the right vibe.
It could have. It very well could have. And it's actually easier for it to go sideways than it is for it to do it right. And you're right, Tim did it excellently. So I do want to hit some of these comments because they're great. I'm not going to be able to get through them all. Otherwise, we'll probably take up most of the time here. Blackwater Technical Diving jumped in here. He said, I think the confusion is that people think Hollywood war and what stories have been told about war is the problem. A couple great examples would be like Hearts War or We Were Soldiers, where it gets blown up a little bit, that more than what it should, right? It's not about it becomes less about the personal story as to what happened to them, and it becomes much more about a particular battle or a particular thing. And that's where I think most people get tripped up. April de Conteville jumped in and said, the power of sharing is not unsimilar to the power of reading books. You see the human library initiatives now where people can borrow a person from an entirely different walk of life and listen to their story and hear their perspectives and experience. That's a great point as well. Tim jumped in. He said, hey, Ash, congrats on your Medal of Valor. Congrats, by the way. Didn't bring that up earlier, but awesome work. Blackwater Technical Diving jumped in, said the power to influence is a critical piece here. Tim jumped in, sharing stories is a way to off-gas emotions, and that is a great way to put it. And then Dan C., last one I'm going to do here is it's so important not to give up on your story and not let it be told by people who mean wrong. Took me 54 years to figure that out, but better late than never. Absolutely. This was something I wanted to bring up earlier, was the fact that if you don't tell your story, others will. Or on the flip side of this, if you don't tell your story, no one will. And then all those lessons that you learned, all those things that you experienced disappear. And we know multiple generations of veterans where we have lost unbelievable fonts of information that are just gone now. All those experiences have disappeared into the veil. So I wanted to ask you guys, what practices do you have? What environments do you seek that allow you to discuss these things for growth, for development rather than like spectacle? Because I'm just thinking of the Legion here in Canada. It used to be a thing. All the vets would come together at the Legion. We'd all be able to share our stories and hang out. But the vibe, to your point, Sean, isn't really there anymore. And when I go to a Legion, it doesn't feel like it's a shareable experience. What do you guys think? Ash, I'm going to hit you first.
Yeah, so lots to unpack there. So I'm going to hit for you from a couple different angles. Number one, some of my stories, they're totally okay to fade away. They're mine. They're my experiences. I'm happy with what I've turned out for as far as my charmed existence has gone so far in the life I've had. So if some of it goes, into the mist of time, that's cool. I do public speaking at schools, and I try to be relatable, saying, This is all the stupid things I did when I was your age. And as I've had a life of service, I'm still serving, as you know, and this is what it's afforded me and be able to come back into the community. So some of the stories get told that way, and again, not all of them needed helmets. And then further on to that, I get the opportunity to help instruct some new recruits coming into the Canadian Forces right now. So I don't say, "Hey, look at me as an example," but I say, choose somebody from the regiment that you want to implement, someone that's grabbed your attention, and ask their reason why they are serving. And come back to me and it's like, what did you learn about Sergeant so and so or Corporal so and so? And the reason why that is they're going to learn from past experiences, and it doesn't have to be mine.
I dig that. I like that a lot. Harrison, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I do it in a couple of different ways. One, as a business owner and leader, I try to extrapolate emotion and these moments from my story to use as like a catalyst for other people that are along their own personal journey. And if you guys are familiar with American culture enough to know that, one, there's not a lot of African Americans in special operations. So for me, if I don't tell my story, there's going to be some kid who's 16 years old, like I was once, that only thought they could be a football player. I was a linebacker. I went and played D1 ball, and that was it. If I don't go to the NFL, I don't know what I'm going to do. I never saw anything over that horizon. If I don't tell that story, there's a chance that some kid is going to not see that horizon as well, or not see that opportunity for themselves. So, you become a proponent, you become somebody, you're the continuity to the next generation. And there's so many different veteran organizations that I'm a part of. There's a nonprofit founded in the name of my best friend who's no longer with us, finding ways to mentor the youth, finding ways to raise awareness for mental health. September is Mental Health Suicide Awareness Month. My brand, we do community events. We got to run this Saturday where we're going to talk about, some of these truly traumatic things that are plaguing our community, both in the military and on the civilian side. And it's just stepping out of comfort and recognizing that you might not be the most bad A guy. You might not have changed a bunch of magazines. You maybe that wasn't you, but you served, you have a story, and somebody wants to be like you. Somebody wants to strive and achieve the things you have. And if you sit there and you're like, I don't think I'm worthy to tell my story, then you lose the opportunity to change somebody's life in a positive way. And you just have to make that decision, but you have to keep making it. And kind of like Sean was saying, you tell that story over and over and over again. I've told the brand story, my apparel brand, 100 times. And every time I feel like I found something else about myself, or I found something deeper about the inception of the brand. But it's that journey personally that empowers others to start theirs or continue theirs.
It's a great point. The reps help, right? Like the more times you tell the story, it can help quite a bit. I just love this. Sean, what are you thinking?
Well, the reps do help for sure. They help me as I rep out my story, of course, but repping it out is again that two-way highway. So if I'm into my first sentence and I look someone in the Mark 1 eyeballs and they're rolling their eyes into the back of their head, well, I guess I just got a life lesson and I got to tell a better story. And so, it is a two-way highway. We're supposed to introspect or reflect on how well we're doing it in the moment, how, maybe a day later looking back, I should have done it maybe a different way. If you're not thinking those things, like if you're not after action reporting yourself on the daily, then you are in for a long life of repeating the same mistake. And if you're okay with accepting that, that's cool. That's on you. And hopefully it doesn't impact anyone else. But that hopefully part is false because it impacts everyone. And so you're supposed to do what's good for everyone around you and yourself. And so that storytelling can always be improved. Like the doc said, he's learning new things about himself and about his efforts as to how to do it better. That's literally perfect in my books. Like, I wouldn't ask for anything more from anyone. So if you're not getting those moments where you are questioning your brand pretty regularly, then are you paying attention to your brand? And I don't mean the brand of Sean, I mean the brand of trying to be a better person in the world for the team around you.
I got to jump in because Harrison brought up a really good mental spark point. We were talking about not talking about war stories, and I'm going to go a little bit off brand, but same vein. We had a first responder running here across Canada lately. We're all tracking that, right, group?
Oh yeah, Satch. Yep.
Yeah. So I got to meet up with him. So instead of telling a war story, again, the boys know I was wounded overseas in my first deployment. And then we talked about some resilience, and it had nothing to do with the changing of mags, but learning how to walk again and struggling my way from a wheelchair to a parachute. And then we talked about the mental health that comes along with being in service for 25 years. And if you've touched war, it'll touch you back. So I guess I took the conversation quite literally of war stories as to telling the story of being told you're not going to walk again properly to being back in the game and doing other things for my community and service. So not all your stories have to be about actually wearing the kit. Maybe some of your stories are about sweat equity, never giving up, forging your own path and resilience. So yeah, I just want to make that counter. I cut my own throat by saying, yeah, maybe don't tell some stories. I guess not all my stories are directly CAD, pad, or camouflage related. Some of them are actually the aftermath of wearing a uniform.
That is a fantastic point. The funny thing is that clicked in my head as you were saying this was that what are like 95% of time in uniform is spent sitting around doing nothing. Right? Like there's a lot of time being bored, and most people don't quite understand that. So like when you see war stories or you watch movies and stuff like that, it's always the exciting parts that are happening. Like yeah, but they don't show the 16 hours of you sitting in front of a friggin' truck while you're waiting for somebody to show up or something to happen, and you're like, well, this is my life right now. So I do love that point. Couple quick comments. Tim jumped in here. He said, got to run. We'll watch later. Love this topic. See This Guy Tonka Truck jumped in and said, the first time Sean talked about why was one of the most pivotal points in my own world. As a civilian with a son who wants to serve, it also helped and continues to help him evolve. So there you go, little Mason, right? Blackwater Technical Diving said, you're not doing anyone any favors taking your stories to the grave. There was no book back in the day, but all these lessons are learned in blood. People struggle. Time is what is needed to teach. And then April Conteville jumped in and said, Dr. Lewis makes a solid point. Being conscious of your own story, shining a light on the unbeaten track for others, the complicated feelings of not feeling worthy or valid enough to share is relatable. No shiny veneers, just a real, raw, and honest walk through our own experiences, which is 100% true. I think it's especially true because I think maybe one of the issues that I see a lot in the veteran community, especially, is the stories get told as a way to size one another up. Let's put, you know what I mean, right? And the sad part is that no two experiences are going to be the same, right? Even you could be in the same firefight with a dude right next to you, and their experience is going to be different than yours. So it seems silly in my mind to use it as a bit of a measuring contest of like, ooh, look how badass I am versus look how badass this person is, when really,
okay, so then, you know, here we are at the point in the conversation as to the tipping point of which direction to take it. So do you tell your story about all the mag changes and all of the explosions and hope that someone picks up what you're putting down? Or do you like sweep that all off to the side, never mention the word mag change, and somehow try to connect with the individual in front of you, either intellectually or emotionally or spiritually or frequency based, however you want to put it? Which one do you choose, left or right? And so, before we even get to that answer, I just want to throw this out that like all of the all three, as I look at all three of you, you've all got a certain vibe, in this conversation, and it's all good. But a person can come in with a story and they've got the wrong vibe, and then the story isn't good. And so you can have the best story in the world, but if you show up and you're all up in my grill and you're being a jerk, I don't care about your story, man. And so it's not that let me retract that. It's not that I don't care about your story. What I don't care about is your attitude. And so it's the attitude, not the story. And so the attitude kind of destroys the story for me. And so, like Ash as an example, when he was on the potty and he was relaying his story, cool as hell, because he did it right. Now, I'm curious as to whether Ash did it right the first 10 times that he told that story, or was it the 100th and the 101st time that he told the story that he started telling it right, or was it the 1,000th time? Because we've already said reps matter. And to April's point of, we're all trying to be transparent and to some degree vulnerable and to some degree be helpful. But if you're not doing it authentically, then is it even worth the words that you're saying? But authentically, in your first few iterations, invariably, we kind of do it wrong. And so you've kind of got to move through that authentic period of relaying your story where you're just botching it, where you're screwing it up, where you're saying too much or not saying enough, that calibration phase of telling a story. And so to you, Ash,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? Do you have any sort of words of wisdom or any insight to that?
Well, you packed a lot of stuff there. So let's talk about vibe check first. Why am I telling that my story or anybody's story or point of articulation about an event? And it boils down to is what do you need to receive from me, and why am I trying to get this point across to you? If we are just two bros that we've got time together and it doesn't really need to be said, less is more. If I have an audience that I have to make a direct point to, and I'm going to downsize the scope of what will happen and just go to the bullet points for a teaching point, you get that. And then, yeah, reps matter. And I've also evolved as a human being. What I know when I was 25, when I first got wounded, to 45 now. So we're going on, a while, living along in the tooth. Um, my captive audience, I want them to take away a little bit more than way I was branding it originally. And I think when I get to the audience, I know that if I have my choice, I want to speak to a group that I want to impact. I have buddies of all caliber, yourselves included. So I can't impress anybody because um, everyone has done something righteous in their own right. And it doesn't have to be with a gun in their hand. We know people of maximum caliber for skydiving and cliff jumping and hunting and all kinds of things where if the spotlight shined on them, we would be way in the gray. Let's be honest. So when it comes to actually storytelling or impacting is a key. If I can't make an impact with the conversation, um, we're just going to fade away from topic and let them talk. And sometimes it's just good to listen, right? You're going to calibrate to what they want to take in and put down.
I love that. One of the things that I realized very early podcasting was the fact that as much as I wanted to be heard, the way you get heard the most is when you listen to everyone else, and then that other people listen to you. Harrison, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Sean kind of hinted at it. We've all heard somebody tell that story that it's like there's like some resistance in the way they're allowing themselves to express their own experience. And you can learn really quickly when somebody hasn't done the work to actually pull the reflections out of their own story, because it just comes off like that tension, that the theme of the conversation, that bravado, that like, hey man, you should probably tell this story to yourself and recount some of these things that you're trying to portray something that is, I never discredit anybody, that I don't want to say is inaccurate, but you're not allowing yourself to pull the thing that this experience was meant to shape you. Like there's something in this, because from all the great, phenomenal leaders that I've had the pleasure of serving alongside, that have led me, that I've interacted with through my time in special operations, like they all came out better men. They all came out with this newfound appreciation, this fragility for life, this like my buddy Jesse that we just talked about. I left the military and I'm growing a business and I went to school and I'm trying to build this brand and this fitness community and this thing. And he said, sitting on his porch, man, I don't care about any of that. I'm going to be the best father and husband that I can be, no matter what. That is my job. I can make whatever I make. I do not care about how much money I make. I will be home every night to tuck my kids in, to kiss my wife. And that is my responsibility until I'm no longer here. I know without having to hear his full story that he's done the work, and he understands that his experience was meant to impact his life and his kids and his wife and his community's life in a positive way. So we feel that resistance really quickly when somebody starts talking. They start flexing their guns and talking about what happened downrange. And it's, unless you can truly articulate it in a way that shapes minds and hearts and changes worldviews, then it's going to fall on deaf ears every time.
Yeah, that's a great point. One thing I was just thinking as well is that certain people will, and I say certain people, will be interested in the technical side of the incident, the story, right? If I tell a hunting story to a bunch of people who don't really hunt, they don't care about the angle of the shot and where my bullet placement was and all these things. No one cares. But someone that does hunt regularly and they are actively interested, I can say like, oh, I got this elk here. And an interested person will be like, oh, how far was the shot? And then you can start to then you go down the rabbit hole versus smashing someone upside the face with all your stories and how awesome you are. I just love this.
Now, yeah, well, you guys were talking earlier, and I was like, man, I need to start hunting again. This is something I need in my life.
Absolutely, man. Time. And funny thing, what did we talk about most? Like, we get to spend like weeks in the mountains. Yeah. It's not even about the hunt, the animal. I love it. So we're running a little short on time. I got one comment sequence here, and then we can do some final thoughts, and then we can shut it down for the afternoon. I got April DeConteville jumped in here on the Instagram side, says, I think you need to really cultivate self-awareness to get a full grasp of the multi-dimensional nature of your full story, covering all aspects: emotional, spiritual, physical, the good, the bad, and ugly. Takes a bit of excavation, perhaps, which I love that word, excavation. It does take excavation. I would challenge anybody, if you're doing, if you're seeing a therapist or doing some sort of therapy for these issues, it's going to take some work. It's going to be an excavation. You're going to have to really look at the.
Well, let's talk about it. What is excavation nowadays? So, like, I'm thinking about April as an example, and I don't know her very well. I just know her through Instagram, and it's not like we're chatting all the time. But what I've seen from her is she's a thoughtful writer. Like, she's got some of the Irish in her, and she's got a bit of poetry for her heart, and she writes in a way that has feeling. And so I think that's part of the current problem with excavation within the veteran community, as it were. A lot of veterans struggle to excavate to their feelings. They struggle to connect to their feelings. They struggle to communicate their feelings. And so, you've already said it, Chance, therapists, or there's a bunch of different ways, but certainly writing and poetry and singing a song and a haiku, whatever. There's many ways that you can do it, as I think about April. And so let's just rapidly go through a quick AAR on what is excavation as veterans right now.
That's a great thought. Harrison, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Man, I think I truly excavate by pouring into others. Being a physical therapist, like I am hands-on with patients every single day, from different backgrounds, different pathologies, different things going on. And, if I can just break through to them to allow them to see the positive in this very detrimental trauma or issue or injury they have going on, it's just uplifting, and I'm always just trying to find ways to, I'm just a people person, and I love people. It's just something that's near and dear to me. And if I can just, connect with someone on an intimate level and get them to feel inspired by my story or help them kind of churn through their own story. Because you guys have met people who like they have a story, but they don't feel like, again, they're worthy, or they don't feel like they've done enough. They haven't, their resume isn't there. And I'm like, dude, you have a story. You've got something, do the work, figure it out. But, it's just something I'm truly passionate about.
I love that. That's one of the best ways to do it, through pouring out through people. I love it. Ash, what do you got?
Well, it's super deep, talking about excavation. So, pun intended. My purpose, I guess, when it comes to that is being the truest form of myself, so I can commit myself to those my inner circle. And by that I mean, like, I have to be the best version of Ash, even on my bad day, for my misses. And I still have to have responsibility for my teammates, and I have to be accountable to me. So I have to do the necessary growth, movement, and evolution for myself. So when you get me, I may not be at 100%, but you're getting the best possible version of me on that day when we meet, no matter what it is. I could be coming in at a solid 6, but this is the best 6 you're going to get because of the work I'm doing for myself. So, I mean, that translates into trying to maybe not inspire, but motivate the next generation of guys that I get to work with at the regiment, or when I'm out with the team that I'm currently on. I'm able to be committed to the here and now, and not trying to be mentally in two places at once. I'm not giving it the focus. So when I'm present, you're getting all of Ashley.
I love it. I love it. My definition of excavation, I would have to say quickly, is I think about physical excavation. If I was using an excavator and I was digging up the ground, it's to allow what comes up, to allow that to happen. Whatever comes up. Like if I'm digging at something and I dig too deeply in one area, it doesn't give me any context of what's happening around me. So it's got to be a much more, a widespread dig for myself.
You're a scraper.
I'm a scraper.
You're a scraper.
And this is a great question, and I want to ask everyone out there that's watching right now, truly, to yourself, what does excavation mean when it comes to your own stories and your own personal capacities? What does it mean? Think about it for a while and give yourself an answer. Other than that, I just want to say thank you guys. This has been an awesome conversation. Ash, Harrison, John, this is freaking awesome. And I think there's a lot of good that came out of this conversation, more so than I had originally anticipated. So I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain on war stories or anything that we covered at all? Ash, what are you thinking?
What I'm thinking right now is just we have a tribe and our inner and outer cordon of people that we affect in our daily lives. So I just want to make sure that I'm committed to the different rings of responsibilities that I have. So whether it's sharing a story or being part of somebody's story, how about that? How about you affect somebody else's story? So whether it's me just shutting up for a minute and letting you develop and cook and stew and develop into, I can sit back maybe 10 years from now and going, you know what? I was part of that. I was there for that. And you don't even take ownership of it. You're just happy being part of it. Dig that.
Man, I love it. Harrison, final thoughts?
Ash, that was amazing. The being a part of somebody else's story is just something I'm truly passionate about. Like I was saying, that is powerful. My closing comments would probably be stay in season. We all have this feeling to downturn after we transition or we go through a challenging experience. We want to kind of like take a step back and, just kind of rest on our laurels a little bit. Like, I did that, I went on that rotation. I went to that school, I went on that deployment, whatever it is. I got that degree. Stay in season, take the time and make the decision to continue moving forward, because that's the only way you're going to do the things that Ash talked about, that Sean talked about, that Chance talked about today. Stay in season, commit to the path that you've been brought forward into, and you'll make an impact.
Bam. Love it. Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thought, one of many, but I'll just try to stick to one, is that to Ash's point, do your best, and your best will probably inspire others that you're unaware of. And so, to Ash specifically, I really enjoyed watching you rappel off of the balcony there into the football game.
That was cool.
One of many things.
Well,
that you've
full
done.
disclosure, I just deployed the ropes, but we got
You
some
were part
ninjas
of the
that were.
game, part of the story. And so that's one of many things that you've done this year, one of many things that you've done in your life. And so these little moments that maybe, if I like you liked something on your social media, and this is now not specifically to Ash, or if I make a comment in your social media, someone's social media, just know that if I'm not liking or if I'm not commenting, I'm freaking watching. And if you're doing some rad stuff that is worthy of a story and you don't get my like, don't think that you ain't being watched. Live your life like you're being watched. Just do your freaking best and trust that people are seeing it. Every once in a while, if you get a like from someone, that isn't the fuel. That is the occasional acknowledgement. You should be driving forward every day, just as the doc said, in season. And if you get the love, then cool. But the true love is living such a great story that people will want to share it with others to make others better. That's actually a form of generational love, is a great story passed through the generations. And so try to live a rad life that you're not living because you want to be noticed. Just do your best to kick that ass.
Yeah. I don't have a ton to add. The only thing I would say is, especially for those telling your story or starting to open up or trying your best and having it not work very well when you first start telling your story, is grace. Give yourself grace. You're gonna screw it up. Allow that to happen. Then keep going. Don't let that stop you. Just, man, you're gonna screw it up, and then you're good to go.
What's the other half of that sentence, though, Chance?
But not slack. So grace, not slack.
Not slack.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm going to define it for those that don't know. Slack is a pre-action thought pattern. That is, I'm not going to do it today. Maybe next time. I'm not really feeling it. Grace is an post-action feeling of, man, I screwed that up. but I was there. I tried. I did my best, and I screwed it up. So grace, not slack, and continue to learn, build, and grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
Airborne.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.